Let me take you right into the moment everything shifted. There were no shoes by the door. That's the first thing she noticed. Royna always tripped over them when she came in. My sneakers, her slides, the old pair of hiking boots we never used but never threw out. But tonight, the entryway was spotless. Not cleaned, emptied. Then came the second thing. Her keys clicked against the counter and echoed. Echoed. That's how she knew something was wrong. The apartment didn't feel full anymore. It felt hollow, like the walls had exhaled. She didn't call out my name. She just stood there, still wearing her little black dress and half a spritz of guilt, staring at the living room like it might speak first. The couch was gone. So was the rug. Even the photo on the fridge of us at her sister's wedding was missing. The silence wasn't accidental. I curated it. Let me rewind, but not far. Just 5 hours earlier, she kissed me on the cheek, said she had a late meeting, and left wearing heels she never used for meetings. I didn't say anything. I hadn't said anything in weeks, but I have been watching, recording, planning. She thought I was oblivious. I let her think that while she was sipping Pinot Noir with Russell Hartman. Yes, the Russell, the boss, she swore looked like a lizard. I was in our bedroom folding my clothes like a ghost, preparing for departure. No yelling, no accusations, just movements, intentional, clean, quiet. I emptied drawers, unplugged devices, rolled up the rug, took my socks, left her silence. I even took the plants. She once said she didn't like the responsibility of watering them. Fitting. Back to her, standing there confused. She walked toward the bedroom. Maybe she thought she imagined it. Maybe she hoped she did. But when she opened the door, her stomach dropped. Her side of the closet still full. Mine, a breath of air. The dog bed gone. The note sitting right in the center of her pillow. Folded, heavy, waiting. I didn't threaten. I didn't insult. I just wrote, "Don't worry. I'm not mad. Just finally listening to what your silence has been screaming." She read it twice, and then her phone buzzed. A message from Russell. "Tonight was amazing. You're glowing." She didn't smile. That's how it started. Not with a fight, not with a discovery, but with a perfectly clean apartment and no shoes at the door. What she doesn't know, this was just the first move. Because while she was out getting dessert, I uncovered something worse than betrayal. And next episode, you'll see why she should have stayed home. Rowena didn't cry when she saw the empty house. She didn't scream either. No dramatic collapse, no shattered wine glass, no pleading voicemails. That's not her style. She's calculated. She thinks in strategies and rehearsed reactions. So instead of panic, she walked calmly into the bathroom, opened the cabinet, and looked for something ridiculous. My toothbrush. It was gone. That's when she sat down on the edge of the tub. That toothbrush had survived 3 apartments, 2 arguments about fluoride, and a year where we could barely afford groceries. If it was gone, I was gone. And Royna, for all her pretending, never believed I'd leave. Not really. See, she always thought I was weak. Not in the physical sense. I could lift her off the ground when she'd let me. But emotionally. She thought I was the kind of man who clings. The man who apologizes even when she forgets our anniversary. The man who waits by the door when she goes out in heels for a team-building dinner. She wasn't wrong. I was that man. But even steel bends with enough pressure. The turning point wasn't the restaurant photo. It wasn't even the night I found Russell's cologne on her blazer. It was earlier, something small, almost nothing really. We were sitting on the couch just scrolling on our phones. I asked her if she wanted to watch that crime doc she'd been talking about for weeks. She didn't look up, just said, "Watch it without me." That was it. That was the moment I realized I had become a background character in my own life. So, I started paying attention. I noticed how her smile was only reserved for texts, how she never touched her plate during our meals, how she always brought her laptop to bed, then turned away from me when the screen dimmed. I felt like I was living with someone who had already moved on emotionally. She was just waiting for the paperwork to catch up. But I didn't confront her. I didn't beg. I didn't shout. I observed. I planned, and then I acted. The apartment wasn't just clean when she got home. It was curated. I left just enough things behind to tell a story. The shared Spotify speaker gone, the framed postcard from our trip to Oregon. Gone. But I left behind the vase she hated, the garlic press she swore was useless, the coffee table she said made the room look cheap. I wasn't being petty. I was being deliberate. She had built a world without me in it. I just gave her exactly what she wanted. A life without me, but on her terms. What she didn't know yet was that her terms were built on lies. Because the night she went to the White Bell with Russell, she made a mistake. She left her tablet at home and I read everything. I didn't go looking for the tablet. It was just there, glowing faintly on the nightstand like some forgotten relic. Roina had rushed out the door in heels and red lipstick, leaving behind the one thing she always guarded like her life depended on it. It wasn't password protected. She had Face ID on and I had set it up for her a long time ago when we still trusted each other. When she used to ask for help instead of hiding things when I still mattered, I wasn't planning to snoop. Honestly, I was hoping to find nothing. That would have been easier. But somewhere deep down, I think I already knew I wouldn't like what I saw. At first, it was nothing. Just work emails, presentation slides, calendar invites, boring, lifeless corporate stuff. Then I opened the Messages app. Not her texts, her work Slack. I didn't even know she used it for anything beyond emoji reactions. But there it was, a private message chain with a contact saved as R. Hartman offline, which I later found out meant she had muted it, so no push notifications would appear. Clever. Too clever. The conversation started off professional enough. A lot of "let's circle back" and "please see attached." But then it shifted slowly. Subtly a compliment here, a playful jab there. Inside jokes, then flirtation. Then photos. Nothing explicit, but somehow worse. Photos of them out late after a meeting, her laughing with her hand on his chest. A boomerang of their wine glasses clinking. Messages like, "No one understands me the way you do. Sometimes I wish we'd met before I got married. He's a good guy, but he's not you." That line, that one line, "He's a good guy, but he's not you." I don't know why that wrecked me more than the rest. Maybe because I knew it was true. I was a good guy. A painfully loyal, overly accommodating, semi-depressed, aging golden retriever of a husband. The kind of man who notices her new perfume but says nothing because he doesn't want to sound jealous. The kind of man who does the dishes even after cooking dinner because she's too tired. The kind of man who asks if she's okay, even while slowly unraveling himself. I felt sick. My ears were ringing. My hands were trembling so hard I nearly dropped the tablet. But I didn't stop reading. I couldn't. There was a message time-stamped just 2 days ago. It said, "Don't worry. He'll never leave. He needs you more than you know." That was the moment something in me went quiet. Not broken, just off. like someone pulled a plug inside me and drained all the emotion out. I sat there in that half-lit room, surrounded by photos of us smiling through years of now obvious lies. And I knew I wasn't going to confront her. I was going to disappear from her life with the same level of care and gentleness that she pretended to show me. By the time she was sipping wine across the table from Russell at the White Bell, I had already loaded the final box into my car. I didn't rage. I didn't leave shards. I left silence. I wanted her to return to a home that looked like she blinked and reality re-rad itself. She had no idea that in the hours she spent pretending she was someone else, I was writing the closing chapter of a life she thought she'd always control. But the story isn't done, because what I found after the messages, it turned everything I thought I knew into something far darker than just an affair. And it involved me in ways I never asked for. I almost didn't open it. The folder was buried deep inside a rarely used writing app Roina kept on her tablet for work. It was the kind of app she said she needed for note-taking during strategy meetings. But let's be honest, no one writes 57 drafts for internal emails. The icon next to the folder was a tiny red dot, unread content. It was labeled Drafts, Personal. No passwords, no fingerprint lock, just sitting there as if daring someone to look. And I did. The first document was harmless, a rambling brain dump from last year titled October Thoughts. Some bullet points, a grocery list, an unfinished idea for a company wellness initiative. But the second file, that's when my heart slowed. It was titled, If I Ever Leave Him. I stared at it. My thumb hovered for a solid minute before I tapped. The screen loaded a wall of clean, cruel text. No intro, no warmth, just bullets and contingency plans. And I swear to you, I stopped breathing when I read the first lines. Sell narrative. I was emotionally neglected for years. Easy to believe. Play up therapist card. Mention marriage counseling that he refused. Not true. Make sure mom is on my side before things go public. If needed, frame situation as financial incompatibility. No one questions that. There was no anger in her tone, no pain. It read like a strategy deck, like I was a client to be phased out with minimal PR risk. The next few paragraphs were worse. She listed out her assets, what she'd keep, what she'd let me have to avoid resistance. She noted who to message first in our shared friend group to manage perception. There were even lines like, wait for salary bump before final decision. Timing matters. Closer to holidays equals more sympathy. Don't underestimate his emotional dependence. He'll collapse if pushed gently. I felt cold all over. It was like reading the instruction manual to my own eraser. And worst of all, it confirmed what I didn't want to believe. She had been planning this long before Russell, long before the White Bell. Maybe long before I ever noticed the distance growing between us. She didn't fall in love with someone else. She had outgrown me and decided to make my exit look like my fault. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Instead, I copied the files to my flash drive, the one I kept taped to the underside of my desk, then deleted my browsing trail. I returned the tablet exactly where she left it. By the time she got home, tipsy and glowing from her dinner, the house would be clean and her secrets untouched as far as she knew. But here's where it gets even more twisted. Because as I packed the last of my things and checked the USB drive for copies, I found one file that didn't look like hers. It was older, titled Letter Never Sent, with my name in the corner. I opened it. It was dated 3 years ago. Before the coldness. Before the distance. Before everything turned sideways. It was a letter Rena wrote to me, but never sent. And it wasn't cruel. It was raw, vulnerable, filled with apologies. I'm scared you'll stop looking at me the way you used to. I don't know how to ask for help without sounding dramatic. Sometimes I feel like I'm vanishing next to you, like I'm just someone who walks around your life but never inside it. It hit me like a punch to the chest because for all her calculated betrayal, there was once a version of her that reached out, and maybe I never noticed. Maybe I was too distracted with my own insecurities, too emotionally blind to see her slipping. And now it was too late. Because whatever that woman had been, she was gone now. Replaced by someone who'd rather rehearse a breakup strategy than speak honestly to my face. So, I left the letter in the folder. I left the tablet where it was. I let her come home to a silence that stretched wider than any confrontation could ever reach. But I also left something else behind, something she wouldn't find until it was already too late. Roina has this ceramic mug, pale cream with a little sunflower on the side. It's chipped on the bottom and faded near the rim, but she insists on using it every morning. She says coffee tastes different in it, even though she barely drinks half a cup before rushing out the door. It's always been her one constant. Even when we argued, even when we barely spoke, even when she stopped wearing her ring, that mug was the last thing I touched before I walked out of the apartment for good. And inside it, folded so tightly it could pass for a sugar packet, I left a note. Just one line, handwritten. You'll think this is about Russell, but it never was. I wanted it to haunt her. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want screaming matches or viral confrontations. I wanted confusion. I wanted silence that felt like pressure. I wanted her to pour her lukewarm coffee, take that first automatic sip, and see the edge of the paper peeking from the bottom like it had always been there. Like I had been watching, and I had. I knew she'd search for meaning in that one sentence. She'd try to decode it, weaponize it, dismiss it, but she'd never really understand it. Because the truth was, Russell was just the final straw. He wasn't the wound. He was the bandage she slapped on top of years of slow emotional decay that neither of us had the courage to name. She wanted him not because he was extraordinary, but because he wasn't me. And I had become the mirror she hated looking into. I left the apartment while she was still at dinner. She had no idea. No idea that I had packed every single belonging I cared about. No idea that I had already removed my name from the lease. No idea that I'd paid the last month's rent in advance with a memo line that read, "Farewell gift." No idea that I had left the dog with my sister, the only soul in that apartment who still ran to the door when I walked in. What she also didn't know is that I'd already gone to see her mother. That's right. Before I left town, I took a quiet little detour to the one person she still listens to. Her mother and I have a complicated history. She's blunt, judgy, the kind of woman who could cut you open with a compliment. But she always respected how much I loved Roina, even if she never thought we were a good match. So when I showed up at her front door unannounced, eyes heavy and voice shaking, she didn't ask questions. She made tea. She sat. And for the first time in 9 years, she listened. I didn't share everything. I didn't show her the messages or the folder labeled, "If I ever leave him." I just told her I was leaving, that I wasn't angry, just done, that Romina had drifted too far away to reach anymore. And as I stood up to leave, her mother did something that shocked me. She reached for my hand and said, "You were never the problem, Ellis." She just didn't know what she had. I didn't cry in that moment, but I almost did. Because deep down I realized I wasn't mourning the end of our relationship. I was mourning the years I gave someone who was already building an exit strategy before I even noticed the cracks. As I pulled out of her driveway, I got a message from Romina. It was short, just, "Are you home?" I didn't reply. 10 minutes later, "Where are you?" I still didn't reply. Then a final one. "Ellis, what did you do?" She had found the house empty. She had poured her coffee. She had read the note. And now she had no script, no defense strategy, no carefully crafted victim narrative. Just silence. And that one sentence echoing through every room she thought she controlled. But here's where it turns. Because I thought I was the one leaving her behind until I got a message I never expected from someone I hadn't spoken to in 5 years. Someone from her past who told me that Ramina's betrayal with Russell was just the tip of something much, much deeper. I had just crossed into Michigan when the notification buzzed through. My phone was resting on the passenger seat, screen dim, face down like it was trying to mind its own business. But when I glanced over at the name, I felt the steering wheel jerk ever so slightly in my hands. I pulled over, parked on the shoulder, put the hazards on. The message was from Jack, Royna's ex, the same Jack she hadn't spoken to allegedly since before she met me. The one whose name used to show up in her dreams and then vanished the moment I asked, "Who's Jack?" The one she swore she blocked years ago. The same man I'd quietly resented ever since she mentioned early in our relationship that no one has ever understood me quite like he did. That Jack. His message was short and surgical. "Ellis, I know you left. I need to talk to you. It's about Royna." She did it to me, too. At first I thought it was fake, some kind of elaborate prank or trap, but the number matched. Same area code, same last name on the profile, same awkward punctuation. He hadn't reached out in over a decade. Not once. Not even when Royna changed her last name on social media or when mutuals accidentally tagged him in old college reunion photos. He had been a ghost until now. I didn't respond right away. I drove another 20 minutes, pulled into a gas station, and just sat there with the engine humming. My hands trembled more than I wanted to admit. I wasn't ready for more. I thought I had closed the book, left the house, sealed the chapter. Whatever metaphor makes it sound clean and final. But here was this man, this shadow from before me, tearing open something I didn't even realize was still bleeding. So I messaged back. "I'm listening." He called 2 minutes later. No small talk, no apologies. Just a voice raw with something between anger and exhaustion. "Royna's a pattern," he said. "I thought it was just me. I thought I was the one who broke her." He told me everything about how their relationship back in their early 20s had followed the same arc. The slow distancing, the emotional gaslighting, the private folders she kept hidden on her laptop filled with lists, drafted breakups, and plans for the narrative she'd feed her friends. She had mapped out how to make him the villain before she ever left. "She made me believe I had hurt her," he said, his voice tight. "She told people I was possessive. She said I was the reason she couldn't grow. Ellis, she even said I weaponized kindness. Does that sound familiar to you?" It did far too much. But then came the part that froze my blood. He told me that Royna had reached out to him 3 months ago under a fake name. Through a wellness account she ran anonymously on Instagram. She messaged him pretending to be someone else, asking how he'd recovered from toxic relationships. He only realized it was her when she slipped up and used a phrase they'd shared in college. A private joke about frozen waffles and Wednesdays. She was probing me, he said, trying to see if I'd badmouth her, trying to test if I'd moved on or if I was still weak. I didn't engage, but I recognized the pattern. She doesn't move on. She circles back. She feeds off the idea that she was someone's unforgettable wound. I wanted to throw up because that meant leaving her wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of the next phase, the reconstruction of her story, the one where I become the problem, the unstable one, the one who abandoned her without warning. She had likely already begun seeding it among friends, reshaping the truth into something more manageable, more performative, more marketable. When Jack hung up, I sat alone in the parking lot for almost an hour. Cars came and went. Rain tapped against the roof. A man walked by selling bootleg DVDs out of a tote bag. I didn't move. I was thinking about all the ways I had tried to protect her. All the ways I had bent, yielded, compromised. All the times I told myself she's just tired or it's just a phase. And now I had evidence. Living proof that she had done this before. That I had simply been next. But this time I wasn't going to be forgotten. This time, she wasn't going to control the ending because I had one more thing up my sleeve, and it was already in motion. Roina always prided herself on being ahead of the story. She didn't react. She reframed. No matter what happened, she knew how to package it, smooth out the wrinkles, and re-deliver it in a version that made her look composed, misunderstood, or reluctantly triumphant. When her best friend ghosted her 2 years ago, she spun it as boundaries. When she quit her last job under suspicious circumstances, she told everyone she was misaligned with upper management values. And when we started slipping apart, she hinted to friends that I was emotionally unavailable and too passive to grow with. She was always prepping her exit strategy, never mind. Which is why what happened the morning after I vanished hit her like a slap from a hand she didn't know was raised. At 7:03 a.m., she opened her laptop, most likely while holding that chipped sunflower mug, probably still tasting the last drags of silence from the night before, and saw my name in her inbox. The subject line, "Let's not pretend." But it wasn't a rant. It wasn't an emotional breakdown. It wasn't me asking her why. I had done all that already in my own head for weeks. I wasn't looking for answers anymore. I was looking for truth. The body of the email was brief but loaded. You rehearsed a story where I'd fall apart. You even drafted it. I read it. You planned the moment you'd make me the problem. And yet, I left first. You've done this before. Ask Jack. You won't get to rewrite me, Roina, because I already sent the truth. Then underneath, I attached 3 screenshots. One from her draft titled, "If I Ever Leave Him." One from her Slack messages with Russell, the "No one understands me like you do" thread, and one from her mother's message to me saying she didn't know what she had, but it was the last line of the email that would have made her stomach drop. This message has already been shared with our mutuals with no edits, no commentary, just facts. I figured you'd appreciate the raw version before the damage control begins. See, I hadn't gone nuclear. I hadn't aired every dirty secret or turned it into a smear campaign. I had simply sent a blind forward email, one that included the screenshots, the timeline, and nothing else. To the 7 closest people in our shared life. 2 couples we used to vacation with, a friend from her old book club, and yes, her own sister. I didn't call her names. I didn't assign blame. I didn't even include a goodbye. I just shared what she had written. And in doing so, I removed her greatest weapon, the narrative. She couldn't unend my email. She couldn't explain away the words in her own files. She couldn't erase the fact that for the first time ever, she wasn't ahead of the story. She was in it. And not as the misunderstood protagonist, not as the woman trying her best, just as someone who got caught documenting the downfall she had designed. What happened next? I could only imagine. I turned my phone off after that. Not airplane mode, fully off because I didn't want to see the reactions. Not yet. Not while I was still shaking. Not while I was still trying to remember how to breathe in a world where I had finally stopped making myself small to keep someone else comfortable. But before I shut it off, I did see one final notification. Roina had posted something, a story on Instagram, just a black screen with white text. I always tried to do the right thing, even when it broke me. That was her attempt, her desperate, delayed first move in a game she was no longer in control of. I didn't respond. Not to her, not to anyone, because that version of me, the man who waited for her to come around, to explain, to care, he was gone. Buried under too many unsent letters, too many missed chances, too many years spent performing stability while quietly dissolving. She wanted silence. She wanted control. So I gave her both in a way she never expected. It happened in the most ordinary place imaginable, a grocery store. A place we used to go together on lazy Sunday afternoons, arguing about which pasta to buy or whether we needed more coffee beans. Only this time, I wasn't pushing a cart beside her. I was alone, free, and it had been 6 weeks since I walked out of the apartment. She never imagined I'd leave. I had just turned down the frozen aisle, half distracted, checking the label on some overpriced vegan pizza when I heard her voice behind me. Ellis, that voice. It didn't hit me like I thought it would. No wave of anger, no tightness in my chest. Just recognition. A name echoing from a past that no longer held weight. I turned around. She looked smaller than I remembered, not physically but emotionally. Like the confidence she wore so effortlessly had cracked in the places no one could see. She was holding a basket, dressed like she was trying not to be noticed. Her face was neutral, unreadable, but her eyes said everything. She didn't say anything else. She didn't need to, and I just smiled. Not smug, not bitter, just calm. "Hope you're doing well," I said softly. And that was it. I didn't ask questions. I didn't lecture. I didn't bring up Jack or the email or the stories she may or may not have told since. I just walked past her, turned the corner, and felt for the first time in years light. You see, healing doesn't always come with big speeches or cinematic closure. Sometimes it arrives in the aisle of a grocery store in a moment where you realize you feel absolutely nothing where pain used to live. And now I'm doing better. I'm staying with my sister for now, helping her renovate the upstairs guest room. I started running again, something I hadn't done since my 20s, and most surprisingly of all, I signed up for a pottery class. Don't ask why. Maybe I just wanted to make something with my hands again, something that doesn't break. Romina, I don't know where her story goes from here. I don't wish her pain. I don't wish her anything. I've stopped imagining what she says about me, stopped wondering what version of the story she tells, because the only version that matters is the one I'm living now. And it finally feels like mine. Thank you for following this journey with me. Now, I want to hear from you. Was there a single moment in this story that hit you personally? Maybe something subtle, like a line of text, a forgotten mug, or a missed chance that reminded you of your own crossroads. Comment below and share it. Let's talk about it. We read everything. You're watching Reddit Confessions, where the truth doesn't need to be loud to be heard. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and if this story stuck with you, pass it on. Someone out there might need to know they're not alone.